Tuesday, August 15th, and today is a big day because later here at around 1 o'clock, that'll be Central Time, 1 o'clock Central Time, Jake Crain from Crain&Company will be joining me to talk about some college football here later. Uh, yeah, I'm obviously really excited later here to just pick Jake Crane's brain and just see what he thinks about this upcoming college football season. Uh, but before then, we're gonna talk about some NBA action because this James Harden situation, it's just getting worse and worse every single day. Uh, Obviously, I've never really liked Daryl Morey as a GM or an owner. Uh, I think he's honestly a little bit of a douchebag when it comes to situations like these. We've seen it in Houston, and now we're seeing it here uh, with Philadelphia. I think if the 76ers are going to get anywhere, especially the playoffs or at least a championship, I think they need to get rid of Daryl Morey before they can do that because he's not gonna bring the team to a situation where they can win a championship. Uh, just because I think he's not a good GM. He doesn't make great decisions. Um, I just think, I mean, look at his moves. The best move he's ever made is trading Ben Simmons. Uh, and honestly, I don't even think that was him. I think it was just because the head coach didn't want him in there anymore, Doc Rivers, and that was like the worst decision they could possibly make, honestly, trading him for James Harden because James Harden, look, he's a good player, but I just don't see him fitting on the 76ers roster. Um, I mean, yeah, he's what the Sixers need. He's a good playmaker, he's a solid shooter, but mostly just from the leadership that he brings to the team. Uh, but now that they basically have to get rid of him eventually, because he's not playing for the 76ers this upcoming season. But I would say if I was him, I would play and just literally do the worst I could possibly play until finally that forces Daryl Morey into a situation where he has to trade James Harden. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't really know how this plays out at the end of everything. We really never know with James Harden who he's gonna go to and when he's going to do it. But I expect him to be traded by the end of this upcoming regular season. Just because I just feel like everything eventually works out the way it's supposed to. He plays, he doesn't do good, and then they finally let him go. Now, trade landing spots, I feel like there's not a better suitor than the Clippers, just because, the Clippers have been looking for that extra superstar for a good minute now. Uh, and I feel like he would just be a great pickup for them in that team. Now, do I think they would be better off with him? No. Do I think they're gonna be better off without him? Kind of, honestly, because how do you think three people who want the ball so badly is gonna do on a Clippers team? I would say not very good. So we're just gonna have to see how it plays out, and I think at the end of the day, I think James Harden is kind of gonna be forced into a situation where he has to play. Uh, so I feel like he stays for the rest of this year, and then he hits free agency next year and pretty much leaves. But honestly, all this situation was caused by Harden because he accepted the player option and then automatically expected them to just trade him. I mean, just go to free agency. You could just go to whatever team you want. he got a little greedy. He wanted that 46 million from the Sixers as that guaranteed signing bonus, basically. And he thought he was going to be dealt to Houston. Well, I mean, Udoka don't want him because James Harden's a crybaby at the end of the day. I mean, you look the last 4 years, he's been traded nearly 3 times. Nobody wants a player that's not going to be loyal to a team. And it's funny because just like not too long ago, he was on Houston for like 7 years, and he was like the reigning MVP. He was the best player in the league. The foul stuff changed, and that changed with it. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how it pans out at the end. Uh, like I said, I feel like he ends up having to stay the rest of the season, just because what can you really do? You don't want to go the full season without playing, because then what? Next season, I mean, he's getting old, so he doesn't really have that much time. And I would say he doesn't have the time to be sitting out, honestly, because he's got to show his worth. Because teams now feel like they can draft a guy better than Harden, because he only averages nearly around 18 a game. I feel like teams just think he's very a replaceable asset, kind of just like Tobias Harris. It's just kind of situation that he's getting old. He's an aged veteran. His value is only going down every single year. So that's what I think about that situation. It's not complicated. I mean, I feel like he's gonna do what he has to do to succeed. But yeah, that's the James Harden situation right now. Another thing I just wanted to quickly talk about here. So the NBA season is pretty much coming up pretty soon. I think it starts in, let's see, today's August 15th. September, October, I think it starts. But we were talking about MVP candidates. I think just like not too many streams ago, we were talking about MVP candidates, and I just want to mention this real quick before we move on. Uh, a lot of people aren't looking at, like, they're looking at Trey Young, they're looking at John Morant, they're looking at all these young guys who could possibly win MVP. And that's great. I mean, I think Luka is probably the most likely to win the next MVP, honestly, given the fact that he just put up like 37 and 7. So he basically averaged a 30-point triple double. But they gave it to 24-point Jokic instead, who I'm not saying doesn't deserve it. He basically averaged a triple double, and that's really difficult to do at the end of the day. But Luka definitely deserves the next MVP. I think he'll get it. But I think a guy that people are kind of forgetting about, who won basically what, back-to-back MVPs, I think, Giannis. I mean, people forget that year he won MVP. He won Defensive Player of the Year as well. I think people are forgetting Giannis is still like the best player in the NBA right now. And a lot of people say Jokic. Well, Jokic, yeah, I mean, he's a dominant big man player. But I've not seen a player that has as much freak athleticism and consistency when scoring as Giannis. I don't think he's beatable when it comes to the NBA's best player right now. I think it's easily Giannis. Like, I don't honestly think it's close. And that's probably a hot take for a lot of people, but I'm sticking with my guns here. I think Giannis wins MVP this year, honestly, because people forget the Bucks have had the best record in the East for like the past 3 years, basically. So, I mean, yeah, they had a disappointment losing in the first round to the Miami Heat, but honestly, that was a doomed matchup when it started. Because Miami was the number one seed just the season before that, everybody knew that they were better than that. And I think it was more of like a 1-3 matchup, to be completely fair. I don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, the Bucks lost to an 8 seed. No, they lost to an 8 seed disguised, well, a 3 seed disguised as an 8 seed. A lot of factors went into them becoming the 8 seed. Injuries, depth concerns, but when it comes to the playoffs, Jimmy Butler, Himmy Butler in the playoffs is nearly undefeatable except in the championship, which we've seen that. So, but I think I think Miami does much better this season, so I don't think the Bucks will have to deal with another Miami matchup in the first round. Yeah, maybe in the later rounds they see them. Maybe as a 4 seed, 5 seed, probably a 6 seed, most likely. But I think the Bucks. This is the revenge tour season, and honestly, they're my championship favorites for this upcoming season. I love my Warriors, obviously, but I think this is gonna be a revenge tour kind of season for the Bucks. I flipping the script here for a second. NFL preseason is in full swing. Uh, for one, I just to start this, I love the preseason just because all these guys who have worked their absolute lives off to get to this moment are getting a chance to be on a 53 man roster, and they're going out there and they're doing their best every single day, and I just love to see it. They're living their dream. They get their kind of like fame. There's always going to be those like preseason, preseason guys that everybody loves. Aiden O'Connell, Raiders quarterback, I think he had a really solid game. 15 of 18, 141 yards and a touchdown. Uh, who knows? I mean, he may be coming for that Raiders quarterback job. No, I think a lot of people overreact in the preseason. Uh, when it comes to performances, this backup quarterback will come out of nowhere and throw for like 300, 400 yards. Uh, but I mean, people have got to realize it's the preseason. Those kids are just trying to have fun out there because they might not get a chance to start ever. So, I mean, they're getting the start in the preseason, and that's really all that matters to them is them just getting that chance that they won't get on a different game. I mean, there's obviously no preseason championship, so it doesn't mean that much. They have 3 weeks of preseason games, so they're just out there trying their best. And I just honestly love the preseason because, I mean, you just get like the craziest plays that happen. Like, a player will just go up and somehow make a one-handed mossed catch, looking like Randy Moss out there. Uh, I think I think every single preseason, especially in training camp, there's that one guy that's like super hyped up because he makes one big one-handed catch. Last year, I think it was George Pickens, but he ended up actually being pretty good. Um, I think he plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm gonna look at his stat line real quick while we have the chance. 801 yards, 4 touchdowns. So that was kind of like the hype guy of the preseason. And there's always gonna be those hype guys because at the end of the day, fans just think. I mean, they just think the preseason is like, oh my gosh, it's the preseason. Holy crap. Um, but at the end of the day, it's preseason, so I think a lot of people just overreact when it comes to preseason games and crap. So just on the mar just on the conversation about the NFL, obviously we are not long from kickoff in week one. I think the first game of like the actual regular season is Detroit versus Kansas City, September 7th on Thursday Night Football. That's kind of like the primetime game. And then you get the all the other games, and then Monday Night Football, Buffalo versus New York Jets, who, by the way, just signed Dalvin Cook. I mean, what the heck? It's like we're playing fantasy football out here. We got Dalvin Cook, Aaron Rodgers, who else? Brees Hall. Um, it's like we're out here playing Madden 24. So that the Jets, just on the conversation about the Jets, uh, I think a lot of people are just looking at them and just overreacting big time just because they got Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, has only shown signs of declining the past couple of years. I mean, he couldn't do nothing with a Packers team that literally didn't change one single bit from the last couple of seasons to seasons before. He threw 12 interceptions, which is was like a season low for him, or season a career high for him basically since his rookie campaign back in 2008. Uh so I mean, his quarterback rating was 91, and that's the lowest he's had in his entire career ever. So I think they over traded for him, honestly. Um, I think they really haven't gave Zach Wilson that much of a chance for him to like develop into a decent quarterback. And now they're just gonna kick him to the curb by starting a quarterback that didn't even eclipse 30 touchdowns last season, and overspending on him too, and paying him nearly $75 million worth of guaranteed money. Uh, it's just absolutely ridiculous how much Aaron Rodgers is getting paid, just to be like a bottom of the bottom of the pack, but when it comes to like top NFL quarterbacks, I feel like it's Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, uh, some other guys I can't think of. Um, let's see. Let me just check real quick. I'm forgetting a couple of guys. Um, hold on. Russell Wilson, I think is up there. Matthew Stafford. Uh, let's see. Hmm. Justin Herbert, obviously. Oh man, he just got the bag, absolute bag. Justin Fields, trying to prove himself this year. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Tua. Uh, the top line NFL quarterbacks you see, and like, oh, they're pretty good. And then I feel like Aaron Rodgers is in that like tier two of quarterbacks. It's just like he's good, but he's not great. And I feel like that's what Jets fans are yet to realize. They're just like, oh, it's the name brand, right? It's Aaron Rodgers, the dude that led the Packers to one Super Bowl and chokes in every single division championship, uh conference championship game. Well, yeah, that's the guy you are getting. And I think maybe they've forgotten, but they've got a lot to deal with in that division. That division's not going to be a cakewalk. Uh, it's probably the least cakewalk of a division you could possibly get, with the Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, and then you're the Jets in that division. And let's not forget, the Patriots have beaten the Jets like 4 seasons in a row now, nearly, except last year. Um, So if you can't win your division games, you can't win the playoff games. So so just looking at the Jets schedule, it just looks very unfavorable to me. Starting off with the Bills, I think that's a blowout, honestly. I don't even think that'll be close. Um, I just feel like the Jets are just like the most overhyped NFL team this year just because they've got Aaron Rodgers and now they've got what? Freaking six running backs down there. Dalvin Cook, uh, Brees Hall. Are they are they just gonna throw Brees Hall to the corner now? Is he just gonna get thrown away like a piece of trash? I mean, I think people forget, but Brees Hall before the injury was going to be the probably most likely offensive player of the year, honestly. Uh, he played like what, 4 games and he had like 457 yards or something like that. Um, they're just they're acting very like selfish right now when it comes to talent on the running back side. Because, I mean, yeah, Dalvin Cook is great, but when you have a guy like Brees Hall, you're wasting his talent on the bench instead of playing him. Who, by the way, Brees Hall was like one of the best college running backs in the entire nation coming out of Iowa State. Um, they drafted him, and then now they're just gonna sign Dalvin Cook to a 1 year deal just to kind of make sure he doesn't play. Because don't forget, but the Jets don't even have just him on the bench either. It's that one guy. What's his name? He was also a really good college running back. Let's see. Uh, okay, let's see. Yeah, they also just drafted one. Israel Ben Ika, whatever the frick his name is. But yeah, Michael Carter, they literally just drafted him like last year, and they're kicking him to the curb too. It's just really honestly of an overreaction because they think that they're gonna win the Super Bowl this year, right? They think they're the favorites, basically. That's not the case. You forget that the Bills are still in your conference. I I I think when it's all said and done, the Bills are easily winning that division because Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the third best quarterback in the NFL next to Joe Burrow, probably. Uh, and then Patrick Mahomes. I think my three is number one, Pat Mahomes, number two, Joe Burrow, and three, Josh Allen. So when you have to go up against Josh Allen in your division, you're not winning that division. I'm sorry. But the division leaders are probably going to be Bengals, KC, Bills, who else? Let's see. Let's look up NFL divisions because I forgot who's in what division here. Okay, so I think it's going to be the Bills out of the AFC East. I think it's going to be the Chiefs out of the AFC West. AFC North easily Bengals. I don't think the Ravens are much of a uh I like the Ravens, but I don't think they have the talent to compete with the Bengals this year. And I think it's the Jaguars out of the AFC South. Out of the NFC East, I think it's the Eagles. I don't think that one's close either. NFC West, I think 49ers, but I think the Seahawks could surprise you. The NFC North is absolutely wide open this year. I mean, you got the Vikings, Packers, Lions, and Bears. I mean, any one of those teams could honestly make a push and win that division. I think last year I forgot who won the division, but I think it was the Vikings who won the division and just barely got in the playoffs. And then lost in the first round, I think. Yeah, but another division that's like wide open this year is the NFC South. Uh, Because, I mean, you look at the quarterbacks. I mean, the Buccaneers have what? Baker Mayfield starting. The Saints have Derek Carr. The Panthers have Bryce Young, and Falcons got Desmond Ritter. I think the Saints are probably the most likely to win the conference because they have the most established veteran quarterback there. But the NFC South is it's gonna be wide open, and I think a lot of people aren't realizing that any team there could actually win the division. Uh, but yeah, moving on from that for now. I think we need to still finish our predictions up here for the NCAA. So let's just go ahead and get this over with our Big 12 predictions. Because we still got about 30 minutes before Mr. Crain joins us to talk some college football. So switching the subject here over to college football, we're gonna talk about some Big 12. Uh, because a lot of people don't realize how tough this conference is gonna be this year. Um, Obviously you've got the two top teams there, Texas and Oklahoma, but I feel like a lot of people aren't realizing how deep this conference is this year. With Kansas probably gonna be good, Baylor's probably gonna be good. Uh, I could see TCU winning at least 6 games. But talent wise, there's not a lack of talent in this conference this year. Uh, and honestly, I think in preseason predictions, a lot of people actually have Texas winning the Big 12. I think they're at like number 15 in the preseason poll. Uh, but obviously that Alabama game is gonna make or break their season. Um, I personally don't think Quinn Ewers is that great of a quarterback. I think he's slightly just a little bit overhyped. I feel like he really just hasn't had that much time to go in there and just do what he does. Last year, obviously, he had the injury that took him out most of the season. Um, but other than that, I mean, Texas had one of the most talented rosters in college football, and they couldn't do crap with it. They lost 4 games, and they really didn't have a chance at the Big 12 championship when it was all said and done. This year Bijan's not there anymore, obviously being on the Falcons at number 8 overall pick. Uh, Go Falcons. But they also have a replacement running back, Cedric Baxter, CJ Baxter actually. One of the most highly touted running back recruits in the entire nation. Uh, so obviously they don't have a lack of running back talent there. So I'm definitely not worried about them replacing Bijan with a different running back. Cause honestly they have just as much talent at that position than previous years. Uh, I think he was actually the number one running back in the yeah, he was the number one running back in the nation. Uh, he has like a 4.5 40 yard dash. So it's absolutely ridiculous how good CJ Baxter is. And he's going to be great for them this season. Another guy that's going to be great this season for them is Xavier Worthy. Uh, he's going to be a first round draft pick. Honestly, I could see him going top 15 in the NFL draft. Uh, he is really, really good, but I think he's too good in college for his own good because Ewers literally only passes the ball to him, even though they have Jordan Washington or Whittington, uh, Donnie Mitchell this season, and J. Tavon Sanders. Uh, so I feel like what Quinn Ewers has got to do this season to work on is his passing and his ability to read the field. Because as a quarterback, obviously, you have to be able to read the field and know when like a safety's dropping, know when a cornerback is changing off to a different guy. You got to know where the middle linebackers are lurking. You just have to know these things. And I think that's one thing Quinn had a major problem with is hitting just the open routes, and he just didn't see a lot of them. Um, Obviously, I think he is a much improved quarterback. I We'll talk about it later here a lot, but honestly, I think Texas beats Alabama just because who has the more established quarterback here. I think it's gonna be Quinn Ewers, and don't get me wrong, none of the quarterbacks Alabama has right now is terrible, but I feel like that uncertainty and the fact that none of them have really played many snaps is going to be one major problem that they deal with in the regular season. Because at the end of the day, that that veteran presence is really what's going to take your team to the next level. Because you look at all the previous national champions, they all had an established veteran quarterback who won a ton of awards the previous season. Alabama with Bryce Young, Alabama with Jalen Hurts, uh, Clemson with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, uh, obviously Ohio State with C.J. Stroud, um, and I think it was Georgia with Stetson Bennett. So when you really look at it, most of the previous national champions had a quarterback that in the previous season was already so good that they really didn't have to worry about. Sorry, excuse me, but they didn't really have to worry about having a problem with the quarterback battle because it was automatically going to be that veteran presence, right? So every couple of years, that quarterback room flips over, and I think that's what's going on with Bama right now, because obviously they just got done with basically a long line of quarterback recruits, um, starting with Jalen Hurts passed along the torch to Tua. Tua passed it along to Mac Jones. Mac Jones passed it along to Bryce Young, and then you get the turnover, right? So now it's like every single like 5 years or so, you're gonna have your franchise quarterback for about 2 years, and then you move on, pass the torch down to the next guy, and the guy before that, and then whoever's after that, and then it kind of flips over onto like the future classes. Um, So I think that's what's going on with Bama right now is they're kind of just dealing with that flip over from the quarterbacks they had before because you look at it all the quarterbacks that Alabama has had beat a five-star recruit out for the job, right? So they don't have that established veteran presence right now. They don't have a guy that's been there and known the system for about 2 to 3 years. The closest thing to that would honestly probably be Jalen Milroe. Uh, I would honestly expect Ty Simpson to start for them, but that's kind of just what I'm talking about with Alabama. Even anyways, we kind of got off topic a little bit there talking about Alabama. We'll talk about it more later, their situation there. But for now, we're gonna keep talking about the Big 12 while we wait here uh, for around the 1 o'clock time when you're not gonna want to miss it. So Jake Crain joins us at 1 p.m. Central Time. So none of y'all are definitely gonna miss that. It's gonna be fire. I'm gonna enjoy talking to a guy that's extremely talented and one of the one of the biggest talk shows on YouTube, sports wise, not counting the Pat McAfee show, because that's obviously taken top there. But when it comes to college football, Crain&Company is one of the most popular sports talk shows out there. A lot of most people know Crain&Company, so it's gonna be really exciting to have Jake Crain on here. But obviously we gotta wait till 1, so all y'all just sit tight. We'll get to that. But for now, we're gonna keep talking about some Big 12 action here. Um, Talking about Oklahoma, um, I feel like they're dealing with a little bit of what Alabama is doing, that quarterback flip over and coordinator changes and obviously the head coaching changes. Um I feel like Lincoln Riley was the bread and butter of that team. He was the offense, he was the soul of the recruiting. He was the reason quarterbacks wanted to go there so bad. Um he was Lincoln Riley is a supreme developer. Cuz you look at it, he's put so many quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that's why people want to go where he goes. You look at Caleb Williams, he's now the best quarterback in the entire nation, and he's going to be a top 5 pick in the upcoming draft. Uh so with Oklahoma, the Oklahoma situation now, obviously they have that veteran presence in the locker room with Dylan Gabriel coming from UCF. Uh, and then obviously you always gonna have that 5-star recruit sitting there on the bench waiting to start past the guy that is that veteran established presence in the locker room. Uh, it's Jackson Arnold, and he's really good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that he's gonna be the one to take them to the next level. Cause last year, I mean, Dylan Gabriel pretty much started the entire season, aside from a couple appearances from Davis Bridwell. But aside from just a couple of good games for Dylan Gabriel, he didn't really do that good. So I personally, uh, with uh, with Oklahoma quarterback situation, I expect Dylan Gabriel to start. But watch out, because later in the season, if you see that veteran quarterback and Dylan Gabriel struggle, I expect them to throw that 5-star Jackson Arnold out there to see how he does. But other than that, I feel like Oklahoma's just really struggling to get over the loss of Lincoln Riley. Because, I mean, you look at the wide receivers, even, they really haven't recruited a guy that's that good since he's been there. I mean, you look at the receiving core right now, it's pretty much Drake Stoops, Intrell Anthony, and Jalil Farquhar. Uh, but other than that, obviously you have the tight end there too, Austin Stagner. But when you look at it, the roster just hasn't had the same growth as you've seen from previous seasons. And I feel like that's a problem that they're dealing with development wise, is that they don't really have a quarterback coach that can go in there and just develop the guy like Lincoln Riley did. Because Lincoln Riley was an offensive coordinator, head coach, and a quarterback coach combined. Because he obviously put Baker, Kyler, now Caleb Williams most likely is going to be the next one. So you look at all that quarterback talent, it's just really going to be tough to develop a guy like that. I mean, just replacing a guy like that and then having to develop a guy that pretty much has had the same like appearances as Lincoln Riley has throughout the. I mean, Lincoln Riley, he's obviously not been at Oklahoma his entire career. I think he's been. Forgot what team it was, but I feel like I think he was the offensive coordinator for a team at one point, and that's how he got. I'm actually gonna check real quick. Yeah, so he was the quarterback at Texas Tech, and then he became an offensive coordinator somewhere, I think, and then he got promoted to, or got hired as the head coach at Oklahoma, and then the rest is history because he got hired back in 2017 after that I think he was actually the OC for Oklahoma, and that's why he got promoted. Let me just check. Lincoln Riley. Let's just check his history here. Uh, Head coach, South Carolina. Walk-on player at Texas Tech, known for his air raid offensive scheme. Yes. Mentored 3 Heisman Trophy winners, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Caleb Williams, and Jalen Hurts, obviously. Um, okay, so yeah, he was a student assistant to Mike Leach, going to the receivers coach, um, and then serving as an offensive coordinator at East Carolina, and then Riley was hired as offensive coordinator by the Sooners, and then he ended up succeeding Bob Stoops, and that's kind of how it all happened. So obviously, just replacing someone like that it's gonna be always difficult, and I think Oklahoma will get over it eventually because Oklahoma is just kind of a school that recruits itself, ki- kind of like Alabama, uh, kind of like the Texas teams. Uh, they just kind of like attract that interested interested recruit by default. Like it just kind of happens fluently, and that's obviously uh something that's we're gonna see in the future. Because I mean, who recruited that quarterback? I know it wasn't that dang offensive coordinator that was at Oklahoma because he's not there anymore. The quarterback coach ain't very good, so it was the university that really recruited him. And yeah, has had a little extra losses. Obviously, they lost Caleb Williams, and that was a pretty big loss, but everybody expected him to follow uh Lincoln Riley to USC, but um just replacing those guys, it's gonna take a minute because you had basically your future planned out there, right? Because you had was it Kyler or was it, I think yeah, you had, frick, I forgot his name. South Carolina quarterback Rattler. Rattler was supposed to be that next like quarterback to win the Heisman for you. He didn't pan out, so and then you had to use your other guy up, and then they kind of got that turnover at quarterback. You had Kyler, you had Baker, Kyler, and then it went over to Rattler. Um, and then it was supposed to go Rattler and then Caleb, but that obviously didn't happen. So now they're just kind of trying to recover with whatever veteran quarterback they can find, and that's Dylan Gabriel. But I don't think they're a force in the Big 12 until they can figure out who they are offensively. Because without Lincoln Riley's offense and his play calling, I think they're really, really going to struggle. So that's it for Oklahoma for now. That's just kind of like how I feel about them. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like they're a really solid team. I just feel like at the end of the day, they struggle a little bit just without that offense. Um, let's talk about the Big 12 champs. Obviously Kansas State. Returning Skyler and Will Howard is gonna be, well. Obviously they started. Was it Skyler? No. Okay. Sorry. I'm talking about the completely wrong quarterback right now. Will Howard coming back for Kansas State. Um, but he really wasn't the starting quarterback for them, but for a couple of weeks, and then it flipped over to, I think it was. Let's see. Adrian Martinez. So yeah, it flipped over to Adrian and then to Will. Uh, but I think Kansas State is in a better position to win the Big 12 than any year before. I know they don't have Deuce Vaughn this year, and that's gonna be a generational loss. Having to replace him because I mean, he was just like 1,000 yards from being their like career leading rusher in school history. So it's gonna be really tough to replace a guy like that. Um, the only guy that comes to mind that they could even like close that's even like close to replacing him is Trayshawn Ward, uh, the transfer running back from Florida State, that's really really good. Um, I think he almost had a nearly around 1,000 rushing yards last season, so that was a great pickup from them. So okay, hold on, give me 1 second. Okay, so we're actually going to change here because Jake Crain is about to hop on here, and we're gonna talk some college football. Um, if any of you have a question for Jake Crain, just shoot it in the chat here, and I will get to it. But I'm about to add him to the stream real quick, and this is gonna be really awesome having him on here. It's gonna be an absolute honor to have someone that's the caliber of human being like Jake Crain. I mean, Mr. Crane's a great human being, and his sports knowledge it's really really like extensive. So it's gonna be nice to just talk to him here in a little bit. Okay, so all right, people, be prepared because we're about to have Jake Crain on here. Like I said before, any questions y'all have for him, just shoot, just shoot them in the chat, and I will get to them. But we're about to talk some college football in here, and it's gonna be really, really exciting. So we're just gonna wait for him to join up here, and then we'll get going. I have a ton of questions for him, obviously, but we're gonna have to limit what we say, because he's obviously a busy man, so can't take up too much of his time, but it's definitely exciting having him on here. So we're just gonna wait here for just a minute. I'm gonna turn off my camera while we wait here for him to join up, but we'll be right back in just a second. All right. So as we're waiting here for him to join, um obviously we have a lot of questions for him, but the first real question I have in mind is about Florida State cuz they look really good this year, and I kind of just want that insider knowledge of them because uh I just want to know what's going on with them and all this hype around this team, and I just want to really ask him about that week 1 matchup because that is going to be super super tough for them. Um, But yeah, it's gonna be really exciting to have him on here. So we're just gonna wait here just a second, and he'll be in here shortly. Okay. Just bear with me one moment as we get him on here. Alright, we are nearly there. We are nearly there, guys. Just bear with us one moment. A little bit longer. She should be in here any second. Okay, come on. Just bear with us one moment as we get him in here. I just don't want to talk about too much because I want to kind of save my questions uh, for him, because obviously we're not gonna have too much time on here with him just because he's a really busy person. So we're gonna have I'm just kind of saving all the questions I could possibly can for when he gets in here. Okay, come on. Just wait, bear one moment with us. We are almost there. He's almost on here. Just whenever he's ready, he's gonna hop on here, and it's gonna be awesome. Just interviewing him here, seeing what he thinks about the college football season. So just wait one moment, and we'll be right there. Hey Jake, man, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you on here, my man.
Hey, man, glad to join up. Obviously, getting close to kickoff, man. Excited to get this thing rocking and rolling.
Yeah, absolutely, man, and it's an absolute honor to have you on here. Obviously, you have one of the biggest sports shows, pretty much in general. So, thanks for taking time to hop on here and just talk some college football with me, man.
Dude, well, look, man, I started this thing from nothing. I coached college football for 9 years, six at the Division I level, and when COVID hit, we all got sent back, and I just started messing around. I'm not a savant when it comes to technology by any stretch of the imagination. So, got a lot of respect for people that grind, man. So I'm always willing to come on and do what I can. And I appreciate the kind words.
Yes, sir, man. The first question I really have for you here, it's gonna be about Florida State, actually.
Yeah,
I personally think Florida State's one of the most interesting teams this year, just with like talent wise, and
yeah.
um, I personally had them at 12-0 for my preseason predictions. I just want to see what you think about them this year.
Yeah, well, I think when we look at the transfer portal, and a lot of people talk obviously about Keon Coleman coming over from Michigan State at the wide receiver position to, go along with Johnny Wilson and some of the other aliens they have running around on the outside there. But I think a guy that's going to be a huge piece, especially in the red zone, is Jaheim Bell. And South Carolina fans, the place where he just came from, they'll be the first to tell you, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He's a matchup nightmare. You can't really put a linebacker on him. You don't feel comfortable putting a DB on him. He's a guy that can block inside the box. I mean, heck, we've seen him line up and take handoffs at running back. You mixing him with Jordan Travis as well, giving him that extra security blanket, I think it's going to be huge. Now, when it comes to overall record, I mean, when you look at Florida State's schedule, obviously LSU week one, I think it's the best week one game that there is. It's it's going to be a heck of a matchup. I keep calling it, the State Farm game because it's the biggest insurance game,
Yeah.
I think, of the season. Because if you lose it, you're not out of it. Because I think, either way, if FSU wins or they lose, or if LSU wins or if they lose, it's going to be a quality loss. And it's early in the year. And then at Clemson, and then possibly maybe rematching Clemson in the ACC championship game. If they're able to split one of LSU and Clemson during the regular season and then win the ACC championship, I think Florida State's going to start out to a point, at least in the committee's eyes, where they can find themselves in the playoff.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Jaheim Bell is definitely a matchup nightmare for anyone
For
covering
sure.
him. Just his speed, and not to mention, I mean, he's not the tallest guy out there, but being a tight end and having that much speed's absolutely ridiculous. But
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest question for Florida State is going to be defensively, because they they obviously are solid, returning pretty much most of their defensive talent. Akeem Dent being back over there at safety, I think it is, and
Yep.
Jared Verse. Uh, I just feel like it's going to be a big question on defense, whether they can handle that week one matchup. Obviously, that's going to be a hell of a game, going up against LSU there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jared Verse going against either one of those tackles, whether it's Emery, whether it's Will Campbell, that's an NFL matchup, and I think you kind of hit on it early. experience is the unteachable intangible, right? Getting Jared Verse back is huge, but football's not a one-man game on either side of the ball. You need help around you to be able to expose those mismatches. We talk about that a ton offensively and having balance around the formation. I don't think we talk about enough of it defensively, but returning that experience, guys knowing where to line up, understanding the terminology, the continuity of the coaching staff. I think those are all things that are a big feather in the cap for Florida State in a year where, with the transfer portal kind of being ingrained now, you do have a lot of turnover on rosters. And while there's a lot of talent that comes and goes, experience is something within a certain program, understanding the way practice is structured, the way you travel, that I think's been kind of slid under the
Yeah.
rug a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. They obviously had probably the most impressive transfer class out of all the teams. Obviously, Auburn being up there, and then it's just Florida State and then Colorado up there too, somewhere around there. But
I agree.
yeah, Florida State's definitely going to be. I'd say four is about right. I would say in the preseason rankings. I've seen your preseason rankings, and I mostly agree with everything in there. So I definitely agree. Florida State's going to be around like that 3-4 spot starting in the season.
Yeah. Yeah, without a
Uh,
doubt. I mean, and the way we rank them, we dropped our top 25 on Crain and Company today. We rank them based on the roster that you have going in. It's a true preseason ranking. Obviously, we have LSU at 3, then Florida State at 4. They play each other week 1, but again, you could look up and one of those teams be 11-1 and be in that 4 spot at the end of the day. So I think if we're looking at quality of roster mixed with schedule, and obviously kind of what went on the periphery of the program, I think Florida State's a top 5 team going into this year.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. Um, we're gonna flip this thing over to the SEC. Um, one of the most interesting teams this season is, I would say, Texas A&M. Obviously, having a new coordinator in there with Bobby Petrino. I just wanted to ask you, how much different do you think Texas A&M will look this season, and do you think Bobby is going to be the one calling the shots?
We actually led off the show with this on Monday. Play calling is a team effort. I do think it is going to be based around what Bobby Petrino wants formation, the way he groups personnels, the way he kind of play calls in patterns. I think the best thing a play call be is somewhat schizophrenic. You don't want it to be as predictable as the days of the week. Now, Jimbo wants that idea. There are times where the head coach comes in on the headset and says, "Hey, I want to run it here. Hey, I want to throw it here. Hey, I like this matchup." And he's the head man. You got to listen to what he says. But, Bobby Petrino has so much cachet. I kind of liken it to Kevin Steele being the defensive coordinator at Alabama. Yes, it's Nick Saban's team, but Kevin Steele has enough equity built up, has enough trust with Nick Saban, has been around the game long enough where there's a pretty long leash on what the head coach, even though he may be an offensive specific guy like Jimbo and Bobby, or a defensive specific guy like Nick and Kevin, where they're going to give you leash to do what you want to do within the system that they want to run. So I don't think that it needs to go good early, right? All these guys have egos. That Miami game
Yeah.
is massive. Even though, it is only one game, I think it's going to be a table setter. It could be a springboard or a step back for A&M. But I think one of the things about A&M that people are discounting, and you see the class they signed 2 years ago, and everybody talks about the NIL and all this stuff. Sometimes you can
Yeah.
get too many prima donnas on that roster. I think they trim some of the fat. I think A&M needs to be an old school, grind it team, physical team. And that's who they are in their DNA. And at some point, you got to go back home to who you are. I think they trimmed enough of that fat. They got enough returning experience on the offensive line and defensive line. I like Connor Wegman. I think he's going to be the guy at quarterback. You have a capable backup in Max Johnson. And then
Yeah.
out wide, you got some guys that can really do some things. I know they're young in some spots, but I love Evan Stewart's big playability. We know that Anias can play. So I think A&M is going to be just fine this year. And 2024 is setting up to be a pretty big year, especially if Petrino is able to stick around.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like they have the talent capable of not just this year, but making a run next year, as you said. Uh, just looking at how much talent they have this year, if they can just keep that up, and obviously they have guys like Evan Stewart, and you're right. I like Connor Wegman. I think he's gonna be really solid. I feel like he improves a lot this year. I think I had them around 7 wins and or 7 to 8 wins in my preseason predictions, but I feel like when you look at the future, Texas A&M's really, really looking good.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. A&M fans are so tired of hearing about the future. They're like oh boy, like Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future. They're about sick of hearing about it. But eventually at the end of the day, they're going to get there when they get the mix right. And I think with Bobby, they really have a legitimate shot to get the mix right. And listen, this game is won and lost up front. It will always be won and lost up front. That's how it is. And I think A&M has enough experience and talent returning to be able to withstand the battle of attrition that is going through an SEC season, that is going through a high-level Power 5 college football season. I think their schedule, it's tough. It's not the toughest, the easiest. It's like Goldilocks porridge is just right. So I would not be shocked if we looked up and A&M finished 9-3.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I feel like there's a lot of like flip games on their schedule. Obviously, at at home versus Auburn is going to be a really tough one. At
Huge.
Miami
It's
is
yeah, that's a
always going to
huge game
be
for them.
big,
Yeah.
but I mean, I feel like Texas A&M could easily either be 4-0 or 2-2 at the end of that like first 4 game stretch. Uh,
Mhm.
they have one of the most difficult schedules in the SEC this year, but I feel like they have the talent to win those flip games, and if they do, I could definitely see about 9 wins for them.
Yeah, I think that's probably the ceiling. I think the ceiling's 9-3 with this team. But again, it's all building toward the future, and I really like if they're able to get a lot of positive momentum heading into 2024. I really think they could do some damage.
And I mean, who knows? We've seen it happen before. You go, you have a good record going into that Alabama game. You never know what might
Look,
happen.
weird things happen, man. Weird things happen.
Yes, sir. We've seen it before. Uh, but flipping on to a different team in the SEC. Obviously, I'm an Auburn fan. Uh, I feel really good about the direction our program is going in, and a lot of people are talking about the future, right? We have a great recruiting class in 2024. Um, I expect to get Kamarion Franklin and even more recruits in there, but that's not what I want to talk about right now. Uh, I just want to get your thoughts about the 2023 season. Who do you expect Auburn to have starting at quarterback, and how do you think we will do this season?
Yeah, I think the safe bet is Peyton Thorne, even though if you read all the reports out of fall camp and listen, propaganda is a real thing in college football as well,
Right.
that it's still a battle. I don't think they brought Peyton Thorne in to sit the bench. I think Robbie's going to push him, though, and even if Peyton wins the job, I think you are going to see some of Robbie Ashford. When I look at this Auburn team, again, I always revert back to up front. That is the engine that drives the car. That is the heart that pumps blood the body when it comes to a college
Yeah.
football program in general. And I think what Hugh Freeze and his staff has done on the offensive line has given Auburn a chance. We can talk about the wide receivers that have come in, and that's great. The Fairweather kid coming in at tight end, that's fantastic. But bringing in those edge rushers on defense, which they have to come through, that's the biggest question mark on Auburn's team right now to me is the pass rush. But what he's done on the offensive line, I think is going to give Auburn a chance in some games where they don't have to get lucky to win. You look at this schedule, I see no reason why they should lose a non-conference game. The game at Cal does worry me somewhat because they're just bad enough on tape for you to take them for granted. But this is the first year this Auburn team has proven nothing. I think it's going to be tough for Auburn to kind of think they can roll their helmet out there and win, at least in year one and in a Hugh Freeze coach program. So when I look at the meat of the schedule, the SEC, you do get Bama and Georgia at home. If you're somehow able to split one of those, I think Auburn legitimately could go 8-4, which would be a heck of a year. It would give you momentum. It would keep momentum going in recruiting. It would only increase it because you can point to the field and say, look, we're doing some things here, and we just had to try and flip this house really quickly in year one. I like the coordinator hires. They both have a ton of experience. They're not going to be afraid of the moment when it comes to third down play calling. But this season for Auburn will come down to how well the offensive line plays, and whether or not they can get a legitimate pass rush. I think they're going to be fine against the run, but you got to be able to get off the field on third down. And if guys like McAllister and McLeod and Falk and even Marcus Harris, the guy you can slide inside and out, if they can make plays on third down and at least get to the quarterback and cause problems, errant throws which lead to turnovers, throwaways which lead to punts, checkdowns which typically lead to punts on third down and long, I think Auburn could find themselves hanging around late in some games they didn't think they could be in and win some games that were going to be toss-ups going into the year.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And when you look at the way their schedule is lined up, it's obviously not going to be an easy schedule. Auburn's always going to have to face mostly
Never is.
LSU, Georgia, and
Yeah.
Alabama. So it's never really going to be an easy schedule for Auburn. But I mean, if you go 4-0 and you go into that Georgia game at home, uh, shout out to Ace for saying this one, but I think we may be able to cause problems because I mean Georgia, they really don't know what they're gonna look like this year with a new quarterback. Obviously, you don't have Stetson Bennett back there. Uh, I'm hearing Carson Beck for starting quarterback, but we really don't know how good he really is. So
Yeah.
you never really know what can happen in the regular season.
Yeah, and Georgia's personnel around him is so good that's going to be a tough one for Auburn. Um, just because Georgia's so deep and they're so talented, especially around the line of scrimmage. And Carson Beck doesn't have to come in there and be Dan Marino or Michael Vick. He just has to, make sure the Ferrari, doesn't go off the road. So that one's going to be tough. But I will say this: it will be Carson Beck's, who I think is going to be the guy. It will be his first true road test in a rivalry game at Jordan Hare, which we all know is built on an Indian burial ground or an old voodoo cemetery. So
Right.
you never really know, but I do think right now between Auburn and or between Georgia and Bama playing at Auburn, I think it would be more likely to beat Alabama. But look, that's what makes the sport so great. You never really do know, so it will be interesting, that's for sure.
And yeah, I completely agree with the personnel part because, I mean, you have guys like Kendall Milton coming back. You have Oscar Delp there at the secondary tight end position. Brock Bowers obviously coming back. He's most likely going to be
Monster.
probably a top 10 pick, honestly. He's a monster. Man, he's unstoppable. But also Lad McConkey there at that wide receiver position. He's going to be damaging at that stretch. So
Haru, the Great
I
White Ninja.
I personally don't see it happening, but you never know what could happen in the regular season.
Never do.
Okay. While we're still on the topic of SEC, you mentioned Alabama, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here. I was talking about it earlier here on the show. Alabama really, it's a big question mark this season. How will they look in the regular season? And uh, I really haven't seen a guy that's really stood out at practice. I expect the guy to be Ty Simpson starting, but being a freshman, uh, and Alabama's personnel really doesn't look the same. I just wanted to ask you, how good do you think they will really do this season?
Well, and we've talked about this a ton. I think they're on shakier ground than they have been in a long time, just from you know, knowing the runs they've had at quarterback. I mean, when's the last time they had to replace a left tackle and a quarterback in the same year? I do think it's going to come down to Ty Simpson and Tyler Buckner just because of the system. Alabama isn't going to be RPO heavy. They don't want to sling it around all the time anymore. I think
Right.
Nick Saban got a little bit tired of that identity. They want to go back to 12 personnel, line up, bully ball, run it down your throat, play good defense, play good special teams. And sometimes when you've gone away from that identity for a little bit, it takes a little bit of time to reform that. Now, Alabama's recruited at an incredibly high level. They've got really good personnel. But when you look around the rest of the country, I think there's some teams that are in more stable positions right now that have just as good personnel as Alabama. So there are a lot of question marks. I think it's a fascinating storyline because, I think Alabama could go anywhere from 12-0 to 9-3. I don't think that the scale has been this wide, or the spectrum has been this long with Alabama for a while. So, we'll know a lot more after week 2 against Texas. But at the end of the
Right.
day, I do think Alabama isn't the shoe-in guaranteed top 5 team that they have been, because of all the circumstances that are going on, personnel, scheme, identity, all that stuff.
Right. And I agree. It's just it's really hard to doubt like Nick Saban's greatness these
For
days
sure.
cuz I mean, obviously he hasn't won under 10 games since I don't even know, honestly, the last
It's been
time
like
he won under
15
10 games.
years.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
15 years or so. So, it's really just hard to doubt him. And I know, yeah, the personnel is really young, but yeah, they brought in what, like the greatest recruiting class we've ever seen at number one, last season. Obviously, bringing in the Rusaw brothers, Justice Haynes at running back, and just so many more 5-star recruits there. So it's just
Yeah,
really
they're
hard
not
to
hurting
doubt.
for talent. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
not hurting
they're
for
def
talent.
they're definitely not gonna be a team that's just like digging in on their depth chart. That's like, oh well, we just don't have it this year. Uh, it's just a matter of which quarterback is really going to be like the stone breaker, you would
Yeah.
say, that would take you to the next level. Because obviously you're right, they haven't had to really dig for a quarterback in so many years, because it was like you had Jalen Hurts, and then it passed over to Tua, and then Tua passed over to Mac Jones, and then Mac Jones passed over to Bryce Young, and now it's
Yeah.
just who's going to be
High
that
class
next guy.
problems. High class
Right.
problems.
High class problems. Exactly. Um so yeah, that week 2 game at Texas is really going to honestly tell us a lot more. So we won't really know much about their quarterback room here until that week 2 game against Texas.
Yeah, it's a great litmus test. It will be, and man, I'm really excited for that matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really fun. Um Flipping over here to the Big Ten, obviously a lot of people, I would say, expects Michigan to be, the reigning conference champions again for another year. But I feel like a lot of people are counting out Ohio State just because they've lost the last 2 years here to Michigan. But when you look at the talent Ohio State has this season, it's really hard to doubt them. And I just wanted to ask you about this Ohio State team this season. Obviously, not having CJ Stroud, but expecting to be Kyle McCord at quarterback. How do you think that progresses this season?
Yeah, well, if Michigan wasn't returning what they were returning, I'd feel a lot better. Or if Ohio State was in the Big Ten West, I'd feel a lot better about Ohio State. I mean, I think they're kind of in a similar spot a little bit, to Alabama, in which we know they have talent. We know they're going to be good. The question is, will they be great? Will they be elite? You got to play Michigan at Michigan. We know Michigan has 7 offensive linemen that could get drafted off this team. I know defense is going to be a strength for Ohio State, and obviously the wide receiver room. But I tell you what, man, I look at a team like Wisconsin's very interesting to me. I think Penn State, if Drew Aller is what a lot of people think he is, that one's going to
Oh
be a
yeah.
fist fight. So I think Ohio State, you never say never with a team that has that much talent. But at the end of the day, when you look at the schedule, when you look at what Michigan has and some of these other teams, I think there's a chance Ohio State could fall back a little bit this year.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree, because I feel like a team like Penn State really hasn't been this dangerous in a long time. Obviously, you mentioned Drew Aller. Uh, I feel like I mean, when we really start to get to see him, I feel like he could honestly be a possible Heisman candidate at the end of the season. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
pushing it
he's
there a
got that
little
type
bit,
talent. No,
but
he's got that type talent. He's going to have opportunities to do it. I mean, it's he's a guy they've been waiting on. They've brought along slowly. Sean Clifford was there for 13 years, so it's about time he gets a shot.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's it's definitely finally time for him to start at the helm there. I feel like a lot of Penn State fans got a little tired at Sean Clifford at the end there.
Well,
Just
yeah,
kind
well, it
of,
was so up and down, and he just could never break through. You know, he was just almost there, just at almost to the surface, and just couldn't get his head above the water in the big one.
yeah, he was just like super inconsistent at quarterback a lot of
Yeah,
times. And
except against Auburn, of course. You know.
yeah, except against Auburn, which of course. But yeah, I definitely agree with the Drew Aller point. I feel like he's as talented as a quarterback as possibly anybody in the country. Well, except for Caleb Williams, I would say. I feel like he's the surefire Heisman. But um, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like Ohio State, it's kind of a 50-50 kind of thing. They could lose to Penn State and Michigan, or they could win against Penn State and win against Michigan.
Yeah,
You
that's
just
what
never
makes it
know.
fun.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Changing the subject to something completely different here. Um, Obviously, I'm a little tired of the conference realignment talk. This is going to be the last season we basically see the Pac-12, so I'm going to talk about some Pac-12 here. Obviously, everybody considers UFC the surefire, like, Pac-12 champs, but I think a lot of people forget that Utah actually won the Pac-12 championship last year. Um, and USC's defense really hasn't like had a major improvement to me. So I just wanted to ask you, how good do you think USC will get this season, given the fact that they really didn't improve their defense much.
Listen, I know it's fun to Caleb Williams is unbelievable. He's going to be the number one pick. USC is going to be great on offense again. But at some point, like if we're going to sit here and talk about them as a top five team, you got to tackle somebody. Like you
Right.
look at their schedule. I mean, it's you got Oregon, you got Washington, you got Notre Dame. I mean, you got Utah, who's ran through you the past two times. To me, if you're going to be a national title contender, you have to be somewhat balanced as a team. And USC and Lincoln Riley
Right.
going all the way back to Oklahoma with Alex Grinch, they haven't been able to stop anybody. You're averaging giving up 52 points a game in the four bowl games you played in that's mattered for Lincoln Riley. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
At some point, when somebody shows you who they are, you got to believe them.
Right. And I was honestly surprised that they brought Alex Grinch back for another season. And I mean, at some point, you just got to look at this guy and just say, it's not working. And you got to change
Yeah, this is.
something.
I think this is his last. I think this is his last shot to be. And you don't have to be the greatest defense in the history of college football. Just give up 25 points a game. You give up 25
Right.
points a game, you're gonna have a shot to win every one you play.
Right. But, I mean, when you look at them and you look at the past years in Oklahoma, they couldn't even do that. I mean, they were
No.
giving up around they were giving up 28 to a team like Stanford and giving up 37 points to an Arizona team that wasn't even good last year.
Yeah, they couldn't
And
block somebody on social media up front.
right. It's just a complete utter mismatch on the defensive side. And I feel like that's the reason Utah stomped through them cuz I mean, you look at Utah, at least they have a decent defense. And
Well, they're physical.
Whittingham, I
Yeah.
mean, Kyle Whittingham is not going to let his defense be babied. So I honestly could see Utah winning the Pac-12 championship again this
They're my
season,
favorite.
honestly.
They're my favorite
Yeah.
to do it.
Next to Oregon, which I think is a really interesting team. I think Bo Nix could honestly be a Heisman candidate because I mean, Oregon doesn't have that hard of a schedule. I mean, they've got their first four games is Portland State, Texas Tech, Hawaii, and Colorado. So they could honestly be 5-0 heading into that Washington game. So, uh,
They could. Watch out for Texas Tech,
Oh
though.
yeah, Texas
Watch out for
Texas
Texas
Tech.
Tech.
I think I had them on the list of my dark horse candidates. They look really good this season. With Tyler, I forgot how to pronounce his. Yeah, Shuck.
Chuck, yeah.
He's gonna be really good this season. Um, Obviously they went 8-5 last year, and a lot of times it looked like they were gonna break through and win some of those games, just losing some close games there. But I definitely agree with that. Texas Tech's gonna be a problem. Okay, let's see. Moving on here. Let's see. Clemson. Okay, so I want to talk about Clemson real quick. I obviously don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're a busy man. So, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions and then we're gonna get you out of here. But, uh, just looking at Clemson, uh, obviously I feel like they're overranked on the AP poll, but I feel like a lot of people aren't looking at Dabo Sweeney like he once was, because um, I think it was DJ blah blah blah, whatever his last name is, Uungale. Um, I think in an interview he said Dabo's offense is super simple, and that's why they haven't really had their success. But when you really look at it, they haven't lost more than 3 games in a season since 2016, 15, somewhere around there. But um, how good do you think Clemson's ceiling really is this year with a question mark at quarterback? How good it really is Cade Klubnik, and a massive question mark on whether their wide receiving core is improving or not? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Crane. I didn't mean to take up too much of your time here, but it was awesome having you on here, man. And it's just like listening to you talk and stuff. You just have like one of the most extensive college football knowledges I've seen. It was awesome to have you on here, man. And hopefully again one day I can have you on here again. So, oh yeah, absolutely, man. All right, I'll let you go here. I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you next time, man. All right. All right, everyone. Big shout out to Jake Crain for coming over here and talking some college football with us. Uh, Obviously, he has some great knowledge of college football, and he just knows what he's talking about when it comes to a lot of stuff. So, shout out to him. I'll put the link to, I don't know if it'll help much, but I'm gonna put the link to his all of his stuff, his Twitter and all that in the comments here. So, um, appreciate Jake Crain, man. Shout out to him for hopping on, and that will do it for this stream. Again, one heck of a stream, man. Having Jake Crain on here to talk college football, but that's gonna do it for now. Running out of time here, but I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Jake Crain for hopping on here and talking some college football. I'm your host, Griffin King, uh, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.